Hi, my name is Emily, and I'm going to talk today about why therapy is very helpful in my situation. Obviously, therapy is different for all kinds of people, and we choose to take a course of action where we talk to specialists if we feel down, depressed, whatever the case may be. And for me, therapy has helped me get through a lot of life issues. I don't think therapy is the end all be all, but I do believe that therapy does help. And I've been struggling with a lifetime of depression. So, in theory, I should have been seeking therapy since I was a teenager, but unfortunately, I didn't. And I don't know if that would have made a difference for me, but I know that as I got older, in the wake of my mother's sad, tragic death, um, and going through my own gender crisis, I then started to realize the need for therapy. And therapy is very helpful because it allows you to get in touch with your inner feelings. People who go to therapy are trying to seek answers and trying to figure out what's going on with them. And there's no shame in seeking out help. Anybody who has daily struggles, life in general is a struggle. So therapy is a way to help you kind of connect the dots to figure out what it is that's affecting you psychologically. And although therapists are not psychiatrists, psychiatrists and therapists work on a different uh, mindset where I go to both actually. I see a therapist and a psychiatrist, but psychiatrists try to treat the problems with medication because they see that there is a link between trying to combat the feelings or the medical situation with medication, and that's a legitimate way to address problems for some people, including myself. But then there's the therapy route, and people who seek therapy, therapists are not trained other than to just talk to people about their feelings and try to go back in time or go to the present time to talk about their life and what goes on with them and their feelings. So, like I said, I was very shy growing up, and I was dealing with my own issues with my feelings, and I was very introverted, so I didn't really talk to many people. And I found that therapy was not something that I even considered, because, first of all, when you seek therapy, it does cost money unless you're lucky to have insurance that covers it. So I was kind of on my own and trying to figure out what was going on with me up until my early to mid 30s. I had lost my mom when I was 29. She had just she was 50, and she suffered from depression also, and she was in and out of hospitals. So I went for therapy in the wake of my mother's tragic loss, and it helped me. And it helped because I had the need to see somebody to talk about it. And not only did I talk about my mother's tragic demise, but I talked about my feelings of being very shy and awkward, and also feeling the way I do, transgender, and also trying to cope with my father's problems. Sadly, my dad was struggling also after the loss of my mom, and he resorted, because of the nature of his job, to drinking. So he had a bout with alcoholism, which was a big problem. So I was trying to deal with life and trying to cope as best I could, being stuck between losing my mom and trying to help my dad out while trying to stay strong in my own life. And I was working I never really had dates. I never really had a connection to people. I was pretty much a loner. So therapy for me was very helpful. And I remember my therapist would always ask me to write in a journal because she said that when you chronicle things in your life, it's very important to highlight those things. And then she would have a way to talk to me. So if I wrote down things in my diary that I wanted to talk about, then she would help me talk about those things. And I think that's important. Not even if you go for therapy. It's good to have a journal in any sense of the word, because journals help you connect to yourself. And it's also a way to remember your past and hopefully go forward in a positive way in your future. You know, when I was writing, and I still write to this day after getting that interest from being given that challenge by my therapist challenged me to write things that meant something to me. So I would always sit and think about those things that were very important. And when I did write, my guts would be exposed in a way, because I would just kind of be very emotional about all those things. And that's the best place to go if you want to get in touch with your emotions and kind of break free from the bond that always held you back. I always was very held back in my life, and I didn't know how to effectively communicate with people. I remember when I was in high school, I was extremely shy. The only way I could connect with people was by participating in sports, where I felt like I was a part of a team. But I didn't really get really all that connected with even my teammates. I was like a lone wolf, and I was extremely shy. So I was very insecure throughout my life, and even into my adulthood. So I think therapy has helped me quite a bit, and I still go for therapy. Actually, I am required to go for therapy in the wake of having 2 nervous breakdowns. And I'll tell you, when you go through a nervous breakdown, it is not fun, and you feel like your life is coming to an end. You feel like everything doesn't mean anything anymore, and you just want to go into your own little corner and hide from everybody. And that, to me, is not the way to live. So I needed to find a venue to help me, and I knew after I wound up in the hospital multiple times that I had to go get help. And my attending psychiatrist at the hospital connected me to a medical facility where I could get further treatment, ongoing care after my release from the hospital in the wake of my nervous breakdown. And I'm very interested in what causes people to have emotional breakdowns and how they recover and bounce back from them. My mother had her share of nervous or emotional breakdowns, and I remember seeing her going through those times, and it was hard, very difficult. And I was just young. I was my very first time seeing my mom have a complete emotional breakdown. I was in my high school days. I was like 17, 18 years old, and it was the most difficult thing to go through, to see someone who you knew in your life who was very strong and very emotionally together, just losing it. And I think that is hereditary, to be honest. I think that my struggles could be linked to my family history, because my mom struggled with manic depression, and she also was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and my dad was diagnosed with severe depression, and that led to his, due to the nature of his work, alcoholism, unfortunately. So I think that we are always trying to connect the dots and figure out what it is that we have to do to help us cope. And I agree that a good part of it was my family dynamics and also my internal struggles. I think that struggling with my gender identity was definitely a big part of my depression. I think one goes in hand with the other. They're definitely linked. And I also feel that the quicker that you realize these things where you need help, the more effective you can be. Well, you'll never truly get over your depression or the things that trouble you, but I think that the quicker you take charge in finding the help you need, the better your prognosis will be down the road. Um, I'm now in my mid-50s, and traditionally, as we get older, life does get a little more complex. We have to deal with a lot more, especially if we have children. We have to deal with the children growing older and hopefully helping them get situated in their lives. We have to get situated in our advanced age as we grow older. It's unfortunate, but it does happen that people get displaced from their jobs because unfortunately there is discrimination, and I believe there is a big uh, age discrimination barrier that a lot of people who are increasing in their age have to face. I think certainly once you hit your 50s, you have to be more concerned about those situations, unless you're lucky enough to find a place to work where age doesn't really matter and they go based on experience. But I've always felt under pressure when I was getting older into my mid 40s because I realized any place that I worked, they were always looking for younger guns, so to speak, where they could get young guns who were intelligent and they could pay them less. So the older experienced professionals, they could kind of, you know, nobody is immune from losing their job. Everybody has that possibility that they could as well lose their job. I certainly know what it's like to lose a job, and it had nothing to do with performance. It has more to do with the fact that I don't know for sure, but I think my lifestyle change was not suitable to the employer's discretion as to, even though I was hired knowing they are knowing my situation, I don't think that they were the owner, not the practice manager, but the owner was not really keen on a transgender person working in their department, accounting especially. So, in the wake of losing my job, that's when everything fell apart. I lost my whole sense of life, reality. I had a breakdown emotionally. I started to fall behind on my finances, and I just felt like things were coming to a very scary end. In my case, I didn't know what to do, and the only thing I could do was to get help. And I had a son who has challenges, so the only way I could be a good parent to my son was to get help. And I realized that was something I had to do. My gender identity conflicts, I always battled with. I remember when I was in between jobs and before I married later in life. I didn't get married till I was around 37 years old. So I had a good part of my life where I was kind of a loner and I did my own things. But my my sense of myself was not really strong. I didn't really know what I was doing. The only thing I knew was I had a job, a career, and I needed to keep that so I could make a living. I was still living at home with my dad, and my sisters already moved out, my two sisters, so it was basically just me and my dad. And my dad struggled with his depression, and I had my own struggles. And my dad wound up in and out of facilities because of his alcoholism. So it was a very difficult time. And the only times I felt good was when I could travel. I did do some traveling, which helped me immensely. I used to drive to Florida by myself. I went down to Florida on a vacation. I realized driving is not the best way to go, though it was a very difficult drive for me. But I managed to go, and then uh, I had a friend that I kind of bonded with after college, so we would eventually become closer, and he and I would book trips out to Florida or California, and we would do things that were fun, and we enjoyed life and challenges, and we did a lot of things. We went to California, we went to Florida, uh, and then I kind of wound up getting back into my own thing. You know, we still hung out, but I started to want to do more. You know, I went to these places and it still wasn't fun in the sense of what I really wanted. So I started to look into going abroad, and that's when I started taking trips up to Canada, and then I went to Europe. I traveled to England, Scotland, Wales. I went to Paris, France, and it was fun. I really had a great time, and I did one of those touring trips. And you know, it's amazing that when you do those kind of trips, they truly help you, and you get to see different cultures and different people, and it gives you the idea that you don't just live in your own little place, that there is a world out there, and you get to see the world. And I think that's why a lot of people go into the military because they feel that it's going to allow them to see places that they never seen before. For me, when I traveled, I felt good, and I felt like it was something that helped me, and I think that we all need to do something like that. As far as going back to get help, I realized that I had a problem with my gender, but I I felt traveling was my outlet. You know, we all want to do things that make us happy. So when I traveled to other states, or did road trips, or traveled out to California by airline, or traveled to Canada. I drove up to Canada actually, which is a good drive. I drove to Montreal and to Toronto, and then I drove up to Vermont, New Hampshire. I love road trips. I used to look forward to them. I remember going to Cooperstown with a couple of friends, went to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and then when I married, my wife and I took our baby. Our son was just a baby at the time. we drove up to Cooperstown to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and we used to go to Virginia Beach. We did some nice road trips. I think driving and going places helps it helps you to look at things in a good way, because you get away from the routines of life. Life can be, filled with the daily grind, as they say. That is a truth. We all have to face our little daily grind, so-called daily grind in life. But if we're so lucky that we love what we do and we appreciate our jobs and we are appreciated in our jobs, then that's fine. It's the ones that don't like what they do, or they don't feel like they're appreciated, and that could be a trap, where you feel like you're just going to a job just to make your bill payments, and that's no way to live. But when you find a job that you like, and you feel that people like you there and you're appreciated, then that makes a world of difference. But even if you have that kind of a job, it's still important that you do trips, and that you get to go out and have a life. And even if you don't go traveling, just going out to movies with friends, or restaurants, or just hanging out with your friends, and those are important things, as simple as it seems. I am of the opinion that if you have a few close friends, that's all you need. Family and close friends, it helps you. And it's nice when you have a friend who cares, that they check up on you, or you check up on them, because that makes you feel like somebody cares. And I think that is something that we all like to know, that people do care, and friendships are valuable. And I remember a couple of times, I met some high school friends that I had kind of lost touch with, or high school classmates that I really didn't know, but became friends subsequently, which I think is valuable also. And I think that when you forge friendships, that it's very important that you kind of live in the moment, and you explore those friendships, and you try, because friendships require effort. People come and go, but if you have a friend who's a true friend, and you can talk, even if you don't see them, just having chats with them, or talking over the phone, or seeing them at a function or an event. I had a close friend that introduced me to other friends. So you also have friends that lead you to the path of finding new friends, which is a good thing too. But it's important to do things, keep active. Also, healthy diet and exercise is important. Being active socially is important. Enjoying time with your children is very important. Providing that time and gaining their respect, and teaching them respect is important. And I think the best I can say about getting older is that when you realize that you're I'm gonna get a little emotional right now. It's hard for me to talk about this, but it's a fact that we all have to face. As we get older, we realize that life is passing us by, and we don't really know the future. All I know is I've lost some good friends from high school. Both my parents are gone. Life changes. It evolves. It evolves into something different from what I knew as a child. And I think that we all have to face that reality that we're not going to live forever. So we have to try to make the best of our life and just be happy for what we have. And I think that once we realize that, then we can move forward and do what we have to do. And for me, I want to do everything possible. You know, if I had a bucket list, I probably wouldn't fulfill most of what I have on my bucket list. But if I can do at least something off that list that will make me happy, then I will. And I think a lot of happiness for me is surrounded by my son and that relationship I have. That is very important. The relationships we forge with our children is by definition, to me, the most important thing ever. Then we have to feel good with who we are, and then we have to live our life. Sometimes we get depressed. Sometimes we feel like we are all alone and we don't have anybody to talk to. But that has to come with realizing life circumstances. Life changes for all of us. You know, we all have to face that reality that life is not always going to be the same as we hoped. Life is going to change, and we have to get used to that idea because we can't do anything about it. We just have to deal with things as they happen. And if we need help, to not be ashamed to get help. As I say, if I need to talk to somebody and I need to get the help I need, then I'm going to do that. I owe that to me, and I owe it to my son, and I just need to be at peace with myself. Until next time, bye.